kindly, if some of you can show their face, because it's really, it's really frustrating. Thanks. You were the only one who showed herself is Bichak. Thank you. Because it's really frustrating and very difficult. Believe me, maybe you're gonna try. We are gonna try. We exchange, we a role game, and we you talk, and we stay behind our. Thanks. Thanks a lot. Because it's really difficult because we don't understand if you are following, if you are,
Can understand.
Yeah, just very difficult, much more difficult than during the classroom. So thank you.
So,
Okay, Francesca, are you continuing now?
Yeah, let's make a general effort to follow, even if the situation is online for all of us. It's a weird and particular situation, but make an effort and please join me to the next step. I'm going to share with you the PDF so that I hope that everything could be clearer. Okay. Can you see the PDF? Can you see?
Yeah.
Okay. So this PDF I'm going after to upload, and in this PDF is written the ISO basics, and this image I think that shows you in the best way the effect of the noise in the loss of quality of your image. So at ISO 100, you have a clear normal image, same size, same proportion, and same dimension and quality of real life. The more we increase the ISO, the more noise will affect the image. And we can see that we can notice the noise, especially if we are going large at real size the image on our computer, because sometimes the ISO is not something that we can see or can notice if we are looking at us on our small device, such as our mobile or small camera. But where we are going to enlarge in real proportion and real size the image, or we are going to print it for our final output that can be your project, but also an exhibition, for example, the noise will be more and more visible. So it's the same principle that rules also the volume of your radio, the gain of your instruments if you play guitar or drums and so on. So keep in mind that you have to prioritize your elements and your choice for a good exposure before you're going to press your shutter release. So where do I place my camera? How can I get a good exposure? How can I optimize my relationship within the scene, within the subject, with the protagonist of my photo session? All these concern choices that you have to do before, starting from these three elements: aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. And I always remind you that a good starting point is what your inner light meter is telling you. But sometimes it could be tricky to interpret it in the right way because the light meter of your device is influenced by the bright conditions of your scene. That's why, for example, it's very difficult to take photos, good photos, well-balanced photos of snow, for example, on mountains, because the inner light view and light meter of any device is more influenced by high lights. So if your sensor is in your camera, the sensor of your camera is in front of a mountain completely covered of snow, the sensor will read, oh, how much light, how much white is in the scene. So close the aperture or keep low ISO or use a faster shutter speed because we have so much light that the quantity that comes from our lens is quite enough. But sometimes it would be tricky and you will risk to take an underexposed photo. That's why, keep in mind, always in very, very bright condition, like a directly sunlit exposure, or we have snow, or when we are in front of a white landscape or a white wall, your light meter will advise you to use a lower exposure when actually it wouldn't work in that way. And on the opposite, when you are in dark situation where you have no info because everything is dark, your camera would advise you to open everything, with the result that sometimes you are going to take the risk to snap an overexposed image. But anyway, these are all situations, all issues that you can easily solve by practicing. I assume that the more you practice, the best results you can have. Because if you consider photography as a language, the more technique you master, the more words and the more elements you have to explain and to express your ideas in your own storytelling. So,
sorry if I interrupt you. This is why you're gonna you're gonna make a midterm photo project. You understand? Because in that case, you have the possibility to practice and the possibility to be guided in your work, right?
Exactly in this way. Also because always related to this idea of storytelling, is important not only to be able to take a good picture technically and visually speaking, as you told before, concerning the core of the theater and performance image, is not only a point of being technically exact and technically right, but you should be able to transmit something and to transmit the core, the idea, the purpose of what we are going to show with your work. So if we think of photography like a narrative can be made in many different ways. Think of a novel, think of a poetry, think of a poem, think of a music that is something intangible. Like you, Professoressa Bertolone, explained concerning the UNESCO Declaration. There are all examples of different ways of narratives that has different ways to be treated. And in terms of photography, are all related to choices that you make before you're going to press the shutter release, but after, where you are going to make different combinations of your images. When you look at them and you can think, how can I make a pair for that image? How can I combine this photo with others to transmit my idea, my intention that could be related to a discovery about the external world, but also related to maybe something that I want to transmit about my inner and intimate world. It depends on the topic and the subject that you're going to choose. And in that case, you are going to use different languages and different terms, exactly like a novel, exactly like a book, and the same happens in photography. So going on, and please follow me on to the next step. Apart from ISO, and this is an incredible example of self-portrait by the great artist Hugo Mulas. And of Hugo Mulas has at this moment the best show exhibition, solo exhibition arranged in Milano until February 10th or 11th on 2025. Big retrospective about the Hugo Mulas work run at the Palazzo Sforzesco, Castello Sforzesco Novecento Museum. I can remember exactly in this moment. You can check it on the web anyway. The last but not least is very important about your photos to set the right white balance. Why we talk about white balance? Because if you think for example, think of the stars, or think of the flames, when you're going to prepare cooking something, and you turn on your cooking equipment, which is the hottest part of your flame? The yellow one or the blue one? Even if you think, because it's something maybe counterintuitive, you can think that the warmest part is the yellow, and the hottest part is the blue part. And in the same way, the hottest and more brilliant stars in the space are not the yellow or red stars, but are the blue stars. That's just to explain you that the blue, what we generally connect to something cold, to a low and ice mood board, is actually in the physical world connected to a higher temperature due to the different wavelengths of colors. But as human beings, we are accustomed to link the idea of blue to something cold, to the ice, to the sky, to the sea. And at the opposite, the yellow and the red to something warm, to the fire, to the flame, to our blood. But actually, the higher temperature is connected to the blue dominant. So that's because it could be a misunderstanding that can affect your photographic work, because we have the brain to interpret and select our scene and the luminosity of our scene. But your camera system doesn't have the brain, as just the sensor and the processor. So we have to feed it with the right prompt about the illumination and the brightness of the real condition of the location on we are. So if you scroll the menu of your camera, but also of your mobile, you can find a sort of menu that could be more or less similar to this. Different symbols are related to different sources of light. Incandescent light as his temperature, with his dominant, that is more or less yellow or orange. And it's something that we can find inside, in indoor location, like in my case. In my case, for example, you can see that I have a sort of red dominant in my room because I have a tungsten light. And the tungsten light of my situation gives a red and warm dominant. But if I was outside, I have the sky, I have the sun, and sun has a higher temperature respect to the tungsten lamp that I have in my room. And the dominant, higher and warmer dominant of the sun is actually connected to a higher temperature measured in Kelvin. So we have to prompt our camera system with the real situation that we have in the real condition of luminosity where we're going to take our picture. Generally speaking, we have also the automatic white balance in our camera system that works in a good way. But we can also set in a very peculiar, specific way if we know what sort of multiple lights we have in the real scene. So if we are sure that we have an incandescent or tungsten lamp, like the case of my room, I will normally set incandescent white balance. If I have fluorescent or LED lamp, I can set the fluorescent symbol or direct sunlight if I'm going to take a picture in an outdoor condition, flash, cloudy and shade lights. So your camera system, if you're going to scroll the menu, explores and shows you all the different settings and parameters that you can decide. On the other hand, you can also work in the automatic white balance. That is a good starting point for, generally speaking, the most situation that you can have. But you can also work in with your personal style and demystify breaking all the rules of the correct white balance just to reach a personal interpretation and a personal mood board. For example, I can use a wrong white balance just to give a blue, so a cold effect on my image, or a warm, to add a warm tone to my final output. So to be creative and not to follow strictly the technicians of what the menu and what the right parameters of your camera system will tell you. For example, in this image, you can see that the right balance would be at probably an indoor or tungsten light balance. That because if I put the right balance, white balance, the camera will add a sort of digital cooler filter to erase and eliminates the red dominant that, generally speaking, all the indoor situation give. So it's something similar to the physical real filters that in the past we mounted behind or in front our lens. If we were outside, we were generally mounting a cooler filter, a warmer filter, sorry. If we were taking picture inside to erase the red and yellow of dominant, we were mounted a cooler filter just to compensate the red and yellow of dominant. And the same is today with our digital sensor. The same happens today inside our cameras. And this because the white, if we are going to check the right white point, the white brings with it all the sequence of the other colors. So the white balance is important because if we set it wrong, all the sequence of all the other colors with their different wavelengths will be wrong. Whereas if we set the right point of white, all the sequence of colors will be correct. And this is particularly important for portraiture for the skin tone of the subject. Sometimes you can also break these rules playing with different white balance of your camera. And for example, in this snap, we can see how what is the behavior if we check and set a wrong white balance for an indoor location. Normally, we should have a warm and yellow tone that should be erased. In this case, adding a cooler filter will have a deep blue effect that can be used for a creative intent or for the creative purpose of your final output. But here we have all a sort of list that is related to the different wavelength and different temperature of wavelength. So to have a sort of different perspective that you can check in any case of every location that you have in the surroundings of your photo session. Remember that the most important thing is to avoid to mix multiple sources of light. For example, tungsten light, the lamp, plus a bit of sunlight coming from the window, plus a flash over there in the corner, plus a LED lens of the torch of my mobile. All these multiple sources of light can create a mashup that can affect, in terms of loss of quality and resolution, your final image. So remember that to have good quality and a crispness snap for your final output, you should keep low ISO and set a correct white balance. Final point, today the challenge between different camera brands, Nikon, Canon, Sony, is not about to increase the resolution in terms of megapixel, but to improve the performances and good quality of good pictures when you are going to take a photo in very dark and low conditions of light. So to make you able to take a photo, a clean, sharp, and crisp photos, even with high ISO, when in the past, like the Professoressa Bertolone explained you before, if you were working in very dark condition like a theater, you were obliged to use high ISO, resulting in a very visible noise, and so with a degradation and loss of quality. Today, the real challenge is to bring back with you a good result and a good photos, even with all algorithm, working with best results and with best performances, also in very low condition. That is the real target of the new technologies, not an improvement just in terms of megapixel resolutions of your camera system. It's quite clear in terms of white balance and ISO. Any question about this topic from you, and how you can compensate, how you can play with these three different elements of the triangle of exposure to bring with you different results, because different combination will give you different results. Any question about it, guys? You can switch on also your microphone if you need assistance or some answer of support about this.
Okay. Everything is clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your answer, Aiken.
You're welcome.
I think it will be clearer, or maybe unclear, when we are going to meet in the classroom.
Yes.
For real, on site. Yes.
We are going to practice it together.
Yeah, I think so. I imagine so.
Yes, with everything, like everything else in the real life, the more you practice, the best results you may reach. I mean, like in everything. It's not so difficult, actually. It's the whole bunch of options that you have in your hands. It's something that you can use in terms of what you're going to explain, and interweaving with your subject and with the real situation that you have surrounding you. So probably if you're going to take a picture on a stage or in a theater, you are going to prioritize the ISO because you are working at low and dark conditions of light. If you're a sports photographer, you are going to prioritize a quick and fast shutter speed, so to compensate with large aperture and high ISO. If you're going to take good quality of portraits, you're probably working with low ISO, low noise, but with high aperture, would maximize your aperture, affecting your image with a shallow depth of fields. So are different combinations that you use to play with. Clear enough?
Theoretically, yes.
Okay, the more you practice, the more you can be.
Okay. Okay, so maybe I can finish this lesson with adding something of the PDF we were screening before. Also because I think that maybe, 4 hours is a little too much online. Okay, I go back to the PDF. Can you see it?
Yes.
So. Okay, so we were here, and I want to read what Agnès Varda wrote, and it could be, something appropriate for all the students. So she writes, Varda started as a photographer as she was 20, and that's what she writes. My first photos were out of focus. I had to work with open exposure. I was trembling and actors were in motion. Everything was difficult. Of course, she is relating about taking photos during a performance. So, okay. Everyone is a beginner at a certain moment, okay? Okay, so here we have some photos by Agnès Varda, dressing rooms, famous actors, and again, others photo by Agnès Varda. And here I think I want to show you something that I think is quite important. Suddenly, from the end of the 50s, but the more and more in the 60s and 70s, something appears, and this something is the audience. Till this moment, due probably also to the techniques, they were too heavy and difficult, they were not easy portable, etc., etc. So the public was not shooting at all. And suddenly we find photos taken of the audience. And for instance, these are a couple of pictures taken by Ito Yosue. And but there's also something else, and the fact that the art is going the more and more in let's say in a democratic or in a mass media direction, and spectators who were on the left behind from the masterpiece become protagonists. So it's exactly the trend that came with the pop art, where the spectators and the audience, anonymous spectators are suddenly inside the masterpiece, inside the work of art. Think at the pictures that Professor Pompei showed you before of now I can't remember the name of the photographer, but the one minute performance.
Edwin Wurma.
Exactly. So in that case, the spectators are at the core of the performance. And here is something that's, again, it starts slowly. For instance, and this is the more and more clear. For instance, here, look at this picture. This was shot by Martin Frank,
The wife of Henri Cartier-Bresson.
Mm-hmm. Right. And this is an important performance by this company, a very famous French company, Théâtre du Soleil, in Paris, and we are in 1972, and something is happening. The student protest movements and all the things were going around. So there are different audiences going to see different performances and in different spaces. For instance, we have for the first time, maybe not for the first time completely for the first time, but it becomes a trend to use found spaces. We are now quite, for us, it's quite normal to think at a performance or an exhibit or an installation in a found space that used to be a church or a warehouse or a factory, but it was not at the time, okay? So we have a different audience, different kind of performances, and different unusual spaces. And so the photographer is taking a different photo as a result. We see, in the first row, we see foods of people, and this is absolutely unusual, and because people were sitting here, so the perspective has completely changed, and this is something that in this case the photo is witnessing a social change, a historical, economical change, not just something from the aesthetical point of view.
Exactly. That's why, exactly. For example, sorry to interrupt. I was in line with this idea. I think that this is a very well-known image in terms of popularity, but if I can share after, if you want.
Oh, you can do it. You can do it now.
Yeah, just because
it's related.
Yeah. This is one of the most famous image
of a movie theater.
Yeah, but also the people that is coming. It was published on the Life magazine of the people assisting at the first 3D cinema movie, and the focus of the photographer is not on what the surrounding, on what was on the scene there, because you can't see what it's projected on the screen, but the focus it's on the people, because it testify social change, a social shift to something completely new. In this case, the event of the 3D, of the new 3D cinematic technique, and it was a full report of people how can reacting in front of a 3D dimensional movie, because it was related. It makes me think what we are going to.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think that the question is, in the photo I was showing you, I think it was more related to a social engagement, political engagement.
Commercial use.
Yeah, and in the case you showed, I think we can talk about mass culture. So the two things are,
Yes, I know what you mean.
The same time, but things are going in different directions.
With a shift.
Yes, yes. You understand? Are you following, students? Are you following, online students?
Give you a sign.
Yes.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So let's go back to this kind of audience. Inside factories, there were a lot of performances. So this is that kind of mood, social, historical mood. Okay, again, like a very famous performance. So let's say classical portrait, and this is Ariane Mushkin, who is a very famous director, and she is following the rehearsal. So this picture is catching her gaze directed to the stage and to the actors. And this is the kind of performance that asks for a different behavior from the photographer, because the performance was not a static one. Took place in different locations, so the photographer had to follow all the different locations. And for instance, in the one you see on your right, the public is leaving by train, and the actors remain on the tracks. So it's a kind of reportage, because the photographer had to follow all the different places. And it's a kind of documentation that has to act differently. And okay, I wanted to show you this one on the left, because it reminds me a lot, it's like a mosaic, a collage, the picture we saw at the beginning. Do you remember? The one with the legs. You remember that?
Yes, the composition, right?
Yeah, the composition. Exactly. So I wanted to show you that there are some patterns that are always there, and suddenly, someone is like they are in a warehouse. We all of us has a warehouse for visual, for images, and as I already said, we think sometimes we think we have this let's say arrogant illusion to make discoveries, to do something completely new, but believe me, most of the time it's untrue. Someone did it already. And okay, these are other pictures. I think this is very interesting. This photographer is very interesting because he never takes the scenic art. So you don't really understand if this is a stage, if this is an actor on a stage, because it's like he's detaching the action from the location, from the stage. So this is another way of creating a layout. So this PDF is just to let you understand that there are multiple choices, multiple practices. For instance, in this case, the photographer was not satisfied of the documentation he had created, and he decided to craft another kind of stage photography. So he took all the actors and they recreated like in a studio again, with all the characters that appear on stage in a different moments. And so it's something recreating the performance. Okay, so it's a kind of documentation where the photographer has a lot of freedom. Here is again the actor in the studio, and here we are in the 80s. Sorry?
Jean Genet makes me remind also of the importance of the audience that you have just quoted in terms of real reports about the audience reaction. And make me think of the iconic, one of the most iconic reportage in the history of photography. That was the work of Paul Fusco, that he was a magnum photographer, unfortunately dead, about the train, the funeral train of Robert Kennedy. If you allow me to share the work. Paul Fusco, at the death of Robert Kennedy, the train with the corpse, the rest of the body of Robert Kennedy, travels throughout. Was Paul Fusco traveled throughout all the states till the funeral locations, and Paul Fusco was on the train and took picture of all the people that was assisting at the passage of the train, all the common people that was waiting to see for the last time the body of Robert Kennedy, was assisting at the passage of the train, and the photographs that was on the train. And we can see also an effect of the image taken a movement, and he took the whole reportage. We can see here that is blurred due to the autofocus, due to the speed of the train where the photographer was in, and the people that was stopping and in all the everyday life just to see for the last time. Here it's clear the effect of the panning of the camera due to the movement of the train, and it's all focused only on the people assisting at the passage of the train with the body of the dead Robert Kennedy. This is complete focus due to the speed movement of the train and due to the fact that the photographer was inside the train to take the pictures. And it took reports of more or less 800 images, all taken in the passage of the train. Paul Fusco work. RFK funeral train.
Thank you. So I'll finish. Okay, so I was saying here we have again the actors recreating the performance, the character with the costumes and some props. You see here the backdrop, and inside the studio. So it's a practice that has never really been forgotten. And this is another something that we are going to do when we go in December to take photos in Teatro Ateneo. You remember that? You're going to take photos during a rehearsal. And this is the only moment in which normally actors and directors and the company allow photographers to take photos. So rehearsals is a very very interesting. It's a strategic moment. Okay. And that's exactly what we are gonna do in December, a rehearsal. We are allowed to take photos during a rehearsal. So, let's see. And are you want to ask something, make thoughts or ideas? I don't know.
Questions, doubts?
Yeah, of course. You are so silent during this lesson. We are not used to that. You normally talk a lot. Probably it's the medium, the online version.
The medium is
the online version of us.
But the idea of medium is very well connected to the topic of our next lesson, because we are going to visit an exhibition about television and radio. So the television medium, the screen medium. So we are very well connected to the next step.
Yeah. Okay. So if you don't have questions or doubts or anything,
we suppose that everything is clear.
We hope so. And we are going to meet again in 1 week, okay, in front of the Maxi entrance at 3 p.m. Okay?
And bring your own camera or mobile.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot. See you. Thanks. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.